In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the NOx sensors on this Ram 1500. This happens to be in the 3.6 liter V6 engine. Let's get into it. We're going to disconnect the negative side, use a 10mm wrench, loosen up this nut right here, and grab the terminal. Slide it up and out of the way. Using a 8mm socket, we're going to loosen up this worm clamp. Take the snorkel off the airbox, slide that off. Disconnect this connector right here, just push down on the tab, it slides off. Using a 8mm socket, loosen up this worm clamp. Disconnect this hose right here. Just want to push down on the tab and slide it out. You can see right underneath, when you push that, the two ears separate. That will slide off. Just grab the snorkel, just slide up over there. There's a grommet, and there's another one in the back here. Just pull up, and we'll pull forward. It slides right off. And I'll just pull this rubber coupler off, put that on the intake. Just take this connector, use a pick or a screwdriver, just slide the little lock back, push up, disconnect it. See, there's a wire retainer right here. I'm going to pop that down. You can use a trim tool. Just pop that down. It's disconnected. And there's another retainer right here. Just pop that off the bracket. And one more right there. Just pop those off just to get some more room. Disconnect this hose right here. I'm just going to use the trim tool just to pry it back. Just right there. Disconnect the throttle body. I'm just going to use the trim tool or a pick. Slide this little connector back, lock, and then push down. Disconnect that. Then the retainer right there. Just use the trim tool, pop that off. Using a 10mm socket, take these two nuts off. These two hoses, I'm just going to use a pick, get under the hose, just loosen it up. Twist those off, same on this one. Just get under it, loosen it up, and pull that off, and pull it out of the brackets right there. And the solenoid, just lift that up, out of the way. Just slide those hoses back a little bit. Be fine. I'm going to take a 10mm ratchet wrench, take these two nuts off in the back here. Once they're loose, I'm just going to do it by hand. Just be careful, don't drop the nuts. There's a bracket right here with two bolts in it. You want to take those out. Use a 10mm socket. Take that up. And there's a retainer in the back there. We're just going to pop that off. Just using a trim tool. Just get underneath. I'll just pop this off. Now I'll take these bolts out on the top and on the bottom of the intake, use an 8mm socket. Make sure those are all loose. They are caged, so they're just going to stay with the intake and slide up. And we're going to pull the intake towards the passenger side. And just slide it out. Just grab this foam piece and just pull it up and out of the way. Just using a trim tool, just get under these retainers, just pop these up for the wiring harness. That's good. We can start disconnecting the connectors. Just to make it easier, I'm going to disconnect the coil connectors. Just pop those out. And these have little locks on them. You're going to slide the locks up for the injector. You get a pick. Slide that lock up just like that. You push down. And push down in the connector. There's a little tab there, and then you can slide that up. Do the same on the other ones. Go. And slide that harness out of the way. Now disconnect this larger connector. There's a little button right here. Push down on that. That just slides apart. Set those aside. You can access these injectors on this side. Just using a trim tool, pop these retainers up from the valve cover. Be careful, don't stretch the wires. Do the same right here. Just to get some slack on the wires. There we go. There's one more back there. Now disconnect these connectors, pop up the locks, there we go, and push down, disconnect the connectors, slide the harnesses out of the way. Take these 4 bolts out, use a T30 socket. Just be careful, don't drop anything in the intake. Grab the fuel rails, just wiggle them a little bit, just pull them up. Just be careful. Oops. And sometimes they pop off like that. You get a little bit of fuel. It's okay. There you go. Make sure you don't lose the O-rings. You should replace these either way. Bit of fuel. Tip these over. There's a couple O-rings in there. I'm going to take those out. Just use a pick. We'll just set this aside. Just grab a couple that just fell down. So we have all the O-rings. You can grab the injectors and try pulling those out. If you need to, you can use some pliers. These are just hose pliers. Just rock them back and forth as you pull them up. Oops. Slide right out. You can do the same for the other ones. You can put a little bit of O-ring lubrication on the O-rings, and then in the fuel rail, just slide it in, line it up like that. That's good, and we'll do the same for the other ones. And slide that one in. Those are all in now. Using a 8mm socket, we're going to take these bolts, loosen these up. And those are caged, so those are going to stay with the intake, but just loosen them. All right, there we go. Those are all loose. There's a wire retainer in the back. You can use a trim tool. Just pop that off. Just try to get underneath that. There we go. Pop that up out of the way. There's another wire clipped in. Back, just slide that up. Now grab the intake, lift it up, and slide it out. Be careful, there may be some debris in there. I'm going to try to not have it fall in the holes. I'm going to disconnect the connector back here. I'm just using a pick. Slide that back, and there's a little button. You just want to push on that button. If you need to, you can use the pick to push the button down. Slide that connector out of the way. Now we'll disconnect the other connector. I'm just going to use a longer pick just so I can push the button down. Oops. There we go. Slide that off. There's a button on the other side. Just push down on that button. Slide it off. There's a coolant hose right here. If you can get on there, disconnect that right now, but we're going to disconnect that once the cooler or the adapter is up. I'm going to use an E8 socket. Take these two bolts back out on the rear, and then there's 3 more in the front. So a total of 5 bolts. So loosen those up. All right, that's loose. Now moving to the front. Good. And one more. All right, that's it. They're all loose. I'm just going to use some needle nose pliers to move that hose clamp. If you have some hose clamp pliers that'll fit in there, you want to use those. Just do the best you can. You just want to slide this hose off. There we go. It slides off pretty easy. Get a little bit of coolant in there. It's okay. Slide that out of the way. And pull the housing out. Take a rag and some brake parts cleaner. You want to just clean up where the adapter is going to mount up. Right there. And if you had any oil in the valley, you want to clean that up. Try to use some rags and try to soak it up as best as possible. All right, that's good. Looks clean. We're going to disconnect the connector. You can see this knock sensor right here. The procedure is going to be the same as the knock sensor in the back. Disconnect the connector, just push down on the tab, and that slides off. Using a T40 socket, loosen up the sensor. That loose, grab the sensor and the bolt, and it slides right out. Make sure the area is cleaned off where the knock sensor is going to go. Take the knock sensor with the bolt. Be careful not to drop the knock sensor, they are sensitive. Get that lined up with the connector facing towards the back of the car. We're going to torque that to 16 foot-pounds. Take the connector, line it up, lock it down. And the procedure is going to be the same for the back one. On the O-rings, you want to make sure you put a little O-ring lubricant or some silicone. You can put some on the other seals as well. Just slide this in place. I'm going to get that hose on first. Slide that on. The best you can. Might have to make adjustments. All right, that's lined up. You can plug those connectors in before we put the bolts in. Lock that down and lock this one down. Push down on the lock. That's good. Put the bolts in. And get those started. snug these down first. Now torque this to 106 inch-pounds. Just go around again, double check. It's good. Take the manifold, lower intake manifold, slide it in place, and get the screws started. Those are all started. We'll start snugging those down. And then there is a torque sequence for this. Now we have a torque sequence. We're going to torque these to 106 inch-pounds. This is number 1. Number 2 is way in the back. Number 3 is on the opposite side in the middle. Number 4 in the back. Number 5 is over here. Number 6. Number 7. And number 8. That's it. Take the injector rail, slide it in place. You can put some silicone on the O-rings of the injectors. Slide those in place. That's good. Put the bolts in, get those started. Now we'll torque those to 62 inch-pounds. Now take the wires, get these set up. Want to connect the connectors for the fuel injectors. Lock those down and then push the retainers in, the wire retainers. Push those down. Connect the connector. This will just hang out there. Now the other side. Connect these wiring harnesses. Any of the push retainers to hold the harness down, you want to push those in. Push the coil wires in. All right, that looks good. Now take this insulation, slide that in place. Just take the upper plenum and just wipe this off just with a rag. You can use a little brake parts cleaner if it's real dirty. This one's not too bad. All right, that's good. Flip it over. All the bolts are still in it, so that's good. Slide this in place. And you want to get the studs in on the brackets. There's this bracket here and the bracket in the back. And get all the bolts started. Now we're going to torque these to 89 inch-pounds. We're going to start in the back. That's number 1. This is number 2. Number 3. Number 4 is further back. This is number 4. Number 5. Number 6. And number 7. Now we're going to put the nuts on this bracket right here. If it seems like this bracket is pushed out, you may have to loosen the bolts down below. This one looks fine. Put the 2 nuts on. There and there. Tighten those down. The 2 nuts for the bracket in the back. Get those on. And snug those down. And just snug. Now connect the hose over here and the wiring harness. I'm going to push the push pins through. Just where those go. You can connect the connector. over here. Lock that down. And the connector underneath the throttle body. Push that in place, lock that down. And push that retainer. And any other hold downs, push those in. That looks good. I'll take the sprocket with the connector, get those two bolts started. And push the retainer in place. That's good. Snug those down. Now take this hose, line this up. It's going to go in the intake right there. Slide that in the brackets. And the other hose with the valve. Make sure that's plugged in. Slide that in place. That'll go over that hose. And plug this in right here. Now take the snorkel, and this piece came off before, so I'm just going to slide this over. Slide it over the throttle body. And get the grommets lined up top. And push it down. That's lined up good. There we go. Tighten down the worm clamp. And snug that up. Take this connector, lock that down. Take the hose in the back, lock that down. Slide the snorkel over the gearbox, and we'll tighten this one down. Snug that down. Now connect the negative terminal, slide that in place, make sure it's all the way down. Tighten it up with the wrench. Make sure it's snug, just give it a wiggle, and that's tight.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.